we start the meeting. This is the Senior Tax Work-Off Subcommittee of the City Council on January 21st, 2021. Having a meeting to summarize the work that the committee has done for the year and to invite the mayor's critical and substantive comments so that we can work together to do what's best for the city. That was our charge, to kind of try to figure out what other communities were doing in Massachusetts with regard to senior tax work-offs, and kind of put this all together in a package to evaluate how it looked for Easthampton. We talked with folks in many communities, several folks at different levels sometimes in the community, just to get their input, and we're glad to be able to share that with you. So we generally run things pretty informally. We have a couple of housekeeping things to do first, but again, we ask for your full input and questions to see what we can do for our senior citizens and for the community at the same time. Housekeeping measures, I would like to be able to have everyone identify themselves so that they appear on the screen. So if you could announce you're here, then I think that will show up. Stan?
Hi, my name is Stan Diamond. I am a citizen in Easthampton and have been a participant in this committee.
Joe?
I'm Joe Banis. I'm a citizen also and a member of the Board of Directors of the Council on Aging.
Peg?
I'm Peg Conniff. I am an elected official in the city of Easthampton, Massachusetts. Perhaps someday our paths will cross.
Jen?
I'm Jen Gallant. I'm the city treasurer in Easthampton.
Brendan?
Hi, my name is Brendan. I'm the director of the Easthampton Council on Aging.
Jay?
Just a bit of housekeeping. Can we count this as roll call?
This is our roll call.
Okay, good. Jay Andrzejczyk, resident in the 5th Precinct.
Excellent. If we at this time could identify someone to be the record keeper for this meeting, may I have a volunteer, please? Joe.
Yes, I volunteer.
Excellent job. Brendan had sent us the minutes of our last meeting, and I hope we've had enough of an opportunity to either make changes to those minutes. So I would ask for any changes, if so, at this time from anyone. If not, may we have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 7th, 2021 meeting?
Move to approve.
Seconds?
Second.
Peg, thank you for the second. We'll have a roll call vote because we are operating under COVID-19 restrictions where we are allowed to meet by remote measures, and every vote we take must be a roll call vote. Stan?
Approve.
For the motion on the minutes?
Approve.
Joe?
Aye.
Joe Bain? Peg?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Jen? Brendan?
Aye.
You wrote the notes, right?
Yeah.
Jay?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
JP will abstain. I was unable to attend the meeting because Cindy was in surgery at that time. So at this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to our presenter, if that's you're ready for us.
Yes,
Peg?
I am. Yep, I am ready.
He will lead us through the presentation, and we're all here to assist in whatever way, and feel free to interrupt at any point, now or later. Mayor LaChapelle.
Tell me when you can, or if you can, see.
I see the program.
Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So Mayor, thank you for attending today. The purpose of today's meeting is really to bring you up to speed on the work that we've been doing, to answer any questions you may have, and to hopefully gain your approval to move forward with this program over the next year. And you'll find out we would like to structure it as a pilot. So I'll kind of launch into this. But before I begin, Mayor, do you have any introductory questions you want to ask before I start, or are you good?
I'm good. I'm sure things will arise during the presentation,
Okay.
and you'll answer like some of the questions, and then I can wait until. Would you rather me wait until the end with questions or midway through? What makes sense?
I think as we go slide by slide, if you have questions, please bring them up.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
So this presentation largely will be the same presentation we give to City Council pending any changes that may come out of this meeting.
Okay.
So that's the committee that you see on the screen right there.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do this. Remember last time I had such a problem? Okay. So essentially, the senior tax work-off program is something that the state of Massachusetts allows municipalities to enter into. It affords seniors, in this case 60 and over, to reduce their property tax liability in exchange for work for the city. And generally what we find is these individuals will be as vetted as an employee. So they'll be Cory checked as needed. They will go through all of the process, interviews and so on, as any employee, but their payment will be as a tax credit, not in a paycheck. So one of the reasons that this came up, which is really no surprise, is that as we're moving through this, and better than anyone, the taxes that the city is experiencing are significant and creating some economic insecurity for our seniors. And Brendan had indicated that a few years ago, the Council on Aging had entered into what's the word I'm looking for? Research with the UMass Gerontology Institute to find out, did a survey with some of the seniors in the city, what are their concerns? And the number one concern was economic insecurity as a result of both their low income and the contrasting high taxes of the city. They're very significantly concerned about that. And 1 out of 5 respondents said that they lacked the finances for one or more necessities in 12 months, and that's jarring. And so the recommendation that came out of the UMass Center was to look into a senior tax work-off program. And there are other communities around us who have done it. Northampton has done it. So it's not, in fact, I was trying to find the number before we started this meeting. There are a significant number of municipalities who are doing this. And I had the number at one point, but it's a pretty high number. And I think people are finding that it's a way to relieve some of the burden for seniors without overly taxing, interesting use of words, overly taxing the city, and in fact, giving the city some help. So that was the impetus behind it. And I think in your first term, I think there was a lot of conversation, and I think we've tried to put some programs in place to relieve the tax burden for seniors. And, we're trying to look at all the tools in our tool belt, not just assuming that one will be the answer.
Yeah.
If there are opportunities out there, we want to latch onto them, and this is one of them. So one of the things we did early on with the folks in this committee is we went out and we talked to other communities, and we gathered the data for some of the other communities on how much do they allow, how many participants have they had historically, what has been the tax lien impact to the city for this program. And if you can see on the slide, it's fairly distributed. I mean, you've got Chelmsford, who's crazy with $150,000 is their total lien. They have 150 participants. Northampton has about 20 participants. So it kind of runs the gamut. And some of these communities have more participants, but then they allow a lower deduction. So you can go up to $1,500. Some of these communities don't go that high, but then they allow more participants in. So everybody gets a little break. So this is not everybody we've talked to, and it's certainly not everybody who has the tax break in the state, but it's reflective of what's going on out there in other communities. So some of the things that we know and we learned in talking with these groups is what kind of volunteer opportunities do communities kind of focus on? And this is really built for not highly technical, although that is also a possibility. We know that there's a lot of people out there who are retired and have skills that could somehow apply to the city. But it also goes that you can have people who have lower skills. You could have seasonal work where you need to augment staff. You don't have to put it in the budget. You can maybe use this program. Special projects that come along where you need to add additional people and or skill sets for a short amount of time, that might lend itself to this. But again, not overly high skill work, but things that you otherwise might have to hire someone or it would go undone. And so this is an opportunity for some of those tasks to be handled. So I think it was Joe Banis who had done some research on kind of the kinds of jobs that people use throughout the municipality. So obviously administrative support would be kind of the number one, where you're doing a lot of paperwork stuff, answering phones, stuffing envelopes, that kind of thing, that you might otherwise not want your budgeted staff to have to deal with. Senior centers, receptionists, drivers, food prep, all those kinds of things. And we do think that probably Brendan will be the key focus area for this initially, that his area in the COA might be the area that we focus on to both get participants as well as fill opportunities within the COA. COVID has messed up everything, but that's the game plan. And libraries, as we know, are significantly underfunded, and they could use a few people to help from a volunteer perspective. And this might be one of those opportunities. And we found that that is something that a lot of communities use this program for. Stop me if you have any questions.
I do. I have a lot of questions.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, you can stop me now.
I just, like, a couple of them you've just answered as it's gone on. So, all right. So the participants don't get a paycheck, but they get a tax credit, right? So are they legal employees?
They are. How did we decide that, guys? When did we determine that they are employees, or
They're employees.
they are employees?
Yes. They are employees of the city. They're Corey checked. They're everything that happens to a new employee, this would happen to that person.
All right. So would they fall under workers' comp?
If they got hurt?
Yeah. And I don't care. I just want to know. Like, I'm not saying, if it's workers' comp, then no. I'm just wondering.
Right. I believe that the city's plan for workers' compensation, the way that's generally calculated would be to add the number of hours of for the plans that I understand, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, to add the number of hours that are worked in the city and then calculate a rate for those number of hours. So yes, the number of hours that you'd have would be added into the rest of the amount, and the rate would be calculated based on that.
Right. So it would also, or could affect our risk, our liability.
No. May I?
Please, Jay. Yes.
Okay. So my understanding of this from the Commonwealth in the law, it is these are considered volunteers. The IRS has come in and said, well, they're being remunerated for their volunteer work. That makes
Right.
them employees. So on a federal level, there is a liability to the individual for taxation purposes on the federal level. On the state level, they are considered volunteers, period. No worries about comp or basically anything.
Yeah, because I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't want to go down we can find this out quick enough, but I also think that volunteers, I'm pretty sure volunteers doing the city's work are covered by worker comp if they have a specific volunteer position that a city employee could do. But for some reason the position isn't open or this person wants to. So that's a follow-up. It's not a deal breaker. And I have the same questions about unemployment, which is a state-based thing. And Jay, what you're saying is if they're volunteers, then unemployment probably would not apply.
Correct.
I would like to add to that if they're not getting a paycheck from the state, if there is no deduction, then there'd be no way to calculate unemployment compensation.
Right.
Because they're not their income is not wages for state purposes.
Right. For state purpose, if it's not, I'm just, yeah, we can ask the insurance company. I'm just trying to figure out the difference between volunteers and this as far as workers' comp. But that's again, it's not a, okay. So then, so the max would be 1,500.
Yes.
And the age starts at
60.
It is 60. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, how many hours, like, is it, okay. Or
111 if you're basing it on $13.50 an hour.
So what if you want to just do 55 hours?
It's prorated.
It is prorated. Okay. When we're pulling this together, or when we did pull it together, was there a way to look at the socioeconomic profile and ethnicity of this group other than just income?
I don't know how to do that. If there's a way to, do we have the statistics that if someone applied for this, we don't have anything on the application, I don't think, that spoke to.
Yeah, and I don't think we should necessarily. I just know, like, I thought about that genealogy study that Brendan had, or census data, or the state elder affairs. If it'd be interesting after the pilot is done to look at who accessed it compared to like and see where we were with numbers and whatnot to generic census data. But that's will veterans get a preference in this program?
There was no discussion of that in the committee. There is a separate tax work-off program for that is different from what our study was. So okay. I would see that as a separate issue.
Okay.
Peg, did you have?
All right. And then if you had a sheet up, wait, I'll save that question for the last. All right. So connecting into groups and assisting groups like Easthampton Neighbors and the library. In the library in particular, the library is not a city department. We're a fiscal conduit for the library. So I'm wondering if the work done by senior work, like people who participate, does it have to be in like a city department? Because the library's not. The library's in our budget just to pass through our mandatory contribution to the library.
I would open this up to anyone else who questioned other communities, but it seemed that some of the functions were public functions and served a public purpose. and that was not necessarily defined to the specific departments that we currently have under the auspices of being paid by the city. But we are a conduit for the library, so I think those would be quite well used, and in fact, other communities have done so, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we should check. I mean, with the library, because we don't pay anybody in the library, and I wonder what would that do to their paperwork. So we just give them the money and we hold their money, but we don't do their payroll. They do their payroll. So as far as like processing like a tax credit or whatnot, I don't know how that works.
Any payments would be made through a tax credit developed within our taxing system. So if you get a tax bill, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, that's how people are paid. They're not paid on a weekly or a monthly basis. They actually get a tax credit. So no funds would run through any specific department, like let's say the library. I don't think that would affect them at all.
Well, but if I volunteered for the library, how would those hours be calculated if the library is independent of the city? Hi, Jen, why don't you go ahead?
To speak to that, actually, if we choose to include the library as an option for seniors to work in, we would for this program, we would treat it just like we do a department. So in other words, if I have someone in my department that's working for me, I'm going to sign off that yes, they worked X amount of hours in this week. So someone in the library would be responsible for at least tracking the hours, signing off that yes, they worked those hours, and then we talked about doing entering a specific group in payroll that is for just these senior tax work off people, and then it would be a matter of, their hours would be entered just like the person who works in my department. You know what I mean?
I have a question for that though, Jen. That feels a little slippery to me because we didn't really talk about this much. And the reason I say that is because if the library is not part of the city, who's to say that I can't volunteer at Furza Flying and ask the city to reduce my tax refund? You know what I mean?
If that business was funded even as a pass-through in our budget.
So we'd have to make that clear.
Right.
It would have to be that parameter.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like when the mayor mentioned like the neighborhood group or like people, outside groups, I don't think we could do it for. The library, yes, but only because it passes through us. That is something we can verify for sure, but
Stan?
That's my thought.
If that is okay with the library, would it also be okay for Easthampton Media?
Yeah, I was going to the same place, Dan.
Well, they are a pass-through for the city, and based on recent emails, that is getting far more complicated than I'd like to see, and we'll be talking about that Saturday, Mayor. But if that's true, and they are a pass-through in the financial aspect, that I would say that would qualify. But I think these are very good questions and ones that we will have to get the definitive answers for.
And by the same token, I don't believe that Easthampton Neighbors would qualify because the city does not provide any funding to them.
Okay.
Or otherwise.
All right.
So being a nonprofit and being a pass-through from the city would be, I think, two thresholds that some group would have to pass.
Makes sense.
Okay. So then what about committee events? So like Winterfest and Bookfest and Cultural Chaos. So members of the community sign up to volunteer. Is that going to be an option for this program?
I don't think we discussed that because I think we were focusing on this being a small pilot program. Yeah. And I don't think we were going to get to that level of numbers of people that wasn't our focus. That is it possible? I think it might be possible to discuss, but I think we're limiting ourselves pretty much to the departments of the city.
Mayor, do you receive do the people who work in those festivals provide direct services to the city? Which is kind of the definition of the MGL, is volunteering for services for the city.
I mean, certainly Cultural Chaos and Winterfest, I mean, they go through city committees, but I mean, when it comes down to it, you know, it's our event. I mean, we're liable for it. And I mean, the committee, like Winterfest, incurs costs, you know, because of the way they want to do something, and they pay it out of their fund. But, you know, the liability is all on the city, and the city ultimately is the sponsor of it. I guess my concern would be, you know, people who are volunteering, and maybe I think it's just a perception problem, or it can be clarified. You know, volunteering, getting a tax work off for something that is usually all volunteer.
We can define it any way we want. We could exclude that.
I'm not for, you know, again, I'm just posing these questions.
No, they're great.
In my mind. Yeah.
They're great questions. Let me just have Jen answer something.
I just wanted to weigh in. You know, don't forget that we are requiring a certain amount of hours for them to work in order to get the tax credit. And when we say, like, we'll prorate the hours, the objective is to, quote unquote, hire people that want to work the whole 111 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, the prorated portion would come in if someone fell ill, or if, you know, a department head said they finished the project and I have nothing else for them and no one else did either. Those are instances where we would use you know, we would give them a credit based on the amount of hours that they did. I think that getting into allowing credits for people working 3 hours here at this event, 4 hours here at that event, that's way too much to you know, take on. And essentially the whole purpose is, you know, those events always have volunteers. You know, they solicit volunteers and people volunteer and it works out. These would be jobs within the city that were more or less created for these people. You know, like, I don't have a clerk, you know, a clerk in my office, but I could have someone come in and do filing. You know what I mean? Like, so it's more or less
filling gaps.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, there were some communities, just to get specific, into the tax collecting, for example. When it's payment day, people come in and they're there maybe the day before and the day of, and you could use an extra staff person or two to answer the phones, somebody who had an idea of what's going on, and other people could be at the so.
Right. And like I said, we can put parameters around this. And be very, and they can't apply for a job that we don't advertise. So if we're not advertising for Cultural Chaos, there's no job to fill there. We would only advertise for those jobs we want seniors to fill.
And so those jobs, like, so I you know, I think of some of the jobs we have posted now. Do they have to be openings that HR signs off on?
I don't think HR participated in the process, and I think we're maybe stepping ahead a little bit right now. If I could ask you to hold that question and maybe continue, I think we're going to get to some other answers for you.
Okay, so on the sheet, the slide I'm looking at now. Home ownership, applicants must be an owner of and residing in or on the property for which the tax set is sought. So when they're owning it, do they need to own it? Like, what if they own it through a family trust?
We did talk about that, and we're not going there.
Okay.
I think we eliminate some cities. I want to say
Yeah.
Needham maybe, or Natick, I forget who it was. Some cities actually do have that stipulation on their application. You can,
Okay.
if you are part of a trust, you can, but we're not doing that.
Okay.
And trying to simplify a pilot to get through some of the bumpy spots and figure this out, and
Yeah.
then roll it out more broadly in a couple of years.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So the slide that's up here now is really our recommendation as to how to move forward with this. So we have picked a 3-year plan because we think that probably COVID is going to be a little bumpy through the end of this year, but we want to get everything in place to be ready. And there may be opportunities toward the end of this year that maybe align themselves to, gaps that COVID has made. But we want to run it for 3 fiscal years to see where things go. We do want it to have, for folks who are 60 years of age or older, that is also something that you can, I believe you can modulate that. We're going with 60. Some communities, I think, have raised that number, but we're going to go with 60. The exemptions taken and would be assessed during a fiscal year, so July to June, our normal fiscal year. As you mentioned, they'd have to be the owner of and living in the property. As Jay mentioned, they're not considered income or wages for state, but for the feds, there is, and you will have to file with your federal income, and there will be deductions that come off. And there are also some communities that take the credit up to the net of it. So while we may say you can have all 1,500 of the, some communities say we'll call it 1,500, but with with all the taxes that are taken out, it's really 1,300. That's what you're going to get. Some communities do that. We're going to go with 1,500 regardless of the taxes.
Okay.
So there's a lot of individuality you can do with this.
Yeah.
So again, the state allows $1,500. We are going to allow same. It is, as of January 1, that'll be 111 hours. That number obviously changes as the minimum wage changes. It will be based on minimum wage, and you can prorate. We are going to use the same guidelines as HUD when determining exemptions for seniors of low or moderate income. So as I step back on this, we probably didn't make it clear that this was going to be for 60 years of age and older and low and moderate income. So, not everyone will have this opportunity, because nor should they. I mean, this is really for folks who are struggling. We estimate right now that there will be 8 to 12, or that's the goal, is to have 8 to 12 participants. 8 is about, I forget the number, $1,300, $1,400. 12 participants at $1,500 would be a net impact of $18,000. You'll notice that I have a little $X in red. What we were trying to figure out, and I don't know that we know that yet, is if we reduce the tax lien for these people, it reduces that for the city, and other people essentially would have to subsidize this $18,000. We still need to figure out what it's going to be a really small number, but we need to be full disclosure and transparent on that. The other option is that somehow we fund this differently, maybe. I don't know if we can backfill with money from the city, but right now that's what we're anticipating, is that, if the tax lien for the city is $1 million, it would be $1 million less 18,000, and that would have to be made up.
Yep.
The impact for the average single family taxpayer, it would raise the effective rate by a penny. Jen, please correct me if I'm interpreting your words wrong.
Do we have that number?
Yes. And that number is an effect of about $2.75
per year.
Yes, and that's on I took the average single family assessed value, which is $274,937. So obviously it would be more for people whose value is more and less for less. So
that's the effect, not the rate, the effect on the rate, but the effect on
the bill.
bill.
So for
Wait, so what's that average amount?
$2.75 for
Okay.
the single family taxpayer for the
For a
entire year
Great, thank you.
to support $18,000 worth of programs.
Yep.
Quick
Okay.
question. The income levels that were listed there, are those pre-tax or gross?
Whatever HUD uses,
Okay.
I'll defer to HUD on that one.
Pre-tax.
Those are for a single person or a married couple. If you happen to have a family that's larger, the numbers are raised. For example, if you had 8 people, I think it goes to $100,000 worth of income, and in order to be eligible. But you have 8 mouths to feed.
Okay.
So we're making it simple to saying if it's a single person or a married couple, that's what the limits would be. If we choose to adopt the low and moderate income standards, and we're recommending that, the little bit of tweak in that is that if you got someone who was retired and had some special skills where their rate of pay might be $40 or $50 an hour, let's say, for example, a retired engineer who just finds that they can't stay away from work, and they could volunteer in our engineering department, for example, to do certain projects or to work on something or to have certain expertise. We wouldn't be able necessarily to have them work under this program, but that would be one heck of a boon for the city if they could. So, but I think the general impact is if really should be directed to low and moderate income for the most part, or entirely, because we want it to benefit not only the city in terms of the work done, but the folks would be qualifying for low and moderate income housing in according to federal standards. These are the folks who need it really the most. So they would be likely eligible for grants somewhere. And here they're exchanging volunteer work for a tax credit and also gaining the benefit of contributing to the community. So,
Right, and those amounts that we're looking at right now, if they're from HUD, those are gross. They're pre-tax before you take out any deductions and whatnot. That's gross annual income.
Yeah, I'll have to see if it's gross or net.
Yeah, most of HUD stuff is always gross.
Okay.
But, you know.
Okay. Shall I continue, or do you have another question?
No, actually, I did have another question, and you just answered it.
Excellent. So this is the kind of the timeline we put down. So with the full expectation that you will approve this to go forward in January, we will spend the next couple of months as a group developing the requirements, meeting with department heads, trying to figure out what positions they might need and or have, figure out job descriptions, like work on those things as the immediate future. Then we want to do, and all these dates are just really relative, but then we want to do kind of with Easthampton Media and other forms of publicizing this so that when we arrive at jobs and job descriptions, we want people to know they're out there so they can apply. And so we're going to do kind of a marketing thing so that people know that it's happening. And then we just, you know, this will have to be part of your budget for 2022. If the lien is to be reduced by $18,000, that will have to be factored into how you prepare the budget, which I know we are already starting to do. So,
right.
So that's kind of the timeline for that. I also included in the packet, and I'd be happy to send this to you, Mayor, just examples of applications that other towns have done, the kinds of questions that are asked, disclaimers. They do have to sign it and date it. And these are a work in progress. This is not necessarily how it's going to end up, but you need the name and address. Have you ever done this before? What department? What kind of skills do you have? And that will help us, yard work comes to mind in terms of the parks and the park system during the summer. They could, there's a lot of opportunity there for just basic cleanup and picking up things. So that's kind of, then there is a financial data sheet that they have to fill out and disclose information as part of the kind of figuring it out if they fit the qualifications. So there will be things that they have to disclose so that we can determine if they fit. But these are absolutely not carved in stone yet. They're just examples.
So can I, just around the job descriptions, I'm just worried about administrative burden on our personnel department. So we have updated job descriptions that I obviously would encourage this group to base honestly to use them. But also if you go to what is it? Hang on. masstowncareers.org. They have a video and documents around what different positions in a city does. And it's in a job description format that hits all of the things it needs to hit. But it's been helpful. We go to it and to get an idea of how, just how job descriptions and are captured. So it's a good resource.
Okay. That sounds good.
But to expect Emily to turn around job descriptions, and I'd legally want to know if we put together job descriptions outside of what we do have now or different projects. I'm a little concerned with labor concerns that could be around that.
The law as it's written, Mayor, really gives a certain leeway to the city to define the process and how they want this to look and work. And they say it right in the law within the construct of the basic tenet of what the law is. The city has pretty broad ability to define it the way they want it to look and act. And Jen, great. You may have a better answer, Jen.
Okay. No, that I can look that up. That's fine. That's awesome. And because I'm looking at this as people coming in to the city government to help with the jobs that we already do, but didn't understand that latitude. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So as an example, if we had already had this before COVID hit, we could certainly create jobs. And I'm making this up and it probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but if we needed people to sanitize conference rooms and clean kitchens and sanitize, that would be a job that we could have people volunteer for. Okay. Stuff like that. Jen, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and I think it's also important to kind of note here that the difference between personnel doing a hiring is we post the actual position. Positions won't be, people can't apply for, they can't pick and choose what they're applying for. We're saying apply for this program. Tell us what your specialties are. And then we match them up with, when we talk job descriptions, it's more or less, what are the department heads looking for? What will this person need to do? And then we start off with, we look at it and say, can they do this job? And then maybe present the job description to them saying, this is what we're looking for you to do. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's not like they can pick and choose what they want to apply for.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Kind of the last slide here is really just about a year's view of some of the milestones. So we'd want to launch it this July, whether or not that happens. But then, we want to continue to get the word out over a couple of weeks. make the applications available, have them go through the process of filling it out and talking to whether that's Emily or us or Joe, or not Joe, Brendan. Again, we can determine those that process, but they will have to fill out all the things, even the kinds of things that you would have to fill out if you were being hired. So, confidentiality or whatever we do when we're on a committee, and all those other things. Then we will go through kind of looking at the applications, assessing it, matching it up, and then notifying the applicant, we have a position that we think you'd be good for. Do you want to participate in that? And then kind of between September and April, so over kind of a 7 or 8 month period, they could work their hours. And then once April hits, then the assessor has time now to evaluate all the hours that have come in through that time frame and assess how that will impact the July 1 tax bills. And so, that's the rough outline of year one.
So in this pilot, the applications are returned and initial review begins. Who's doing the initial review?
Probably our friend Brendan.
Well, I just wanted to quickly, because I know that you had mentioned the concern about overloading personnel, and I agree with you. So what I'm hoping is that the COA would be allowed, the board would be allowed to develop a subcommittee where we could look at all the applications, go through and maybe interview these people, and then send them over to personnel for some of the basics, some of the trainings that would be required of our volunteers. So I think if that's possible, we can use our resources at the COA to, stop people from directly going to personnel and having to deal with this surge of potential applicants.
And Mayor, there is one community that actually gives people the tax break for being the person that evaluates all the people that are going to fill positions to, in one of the communities, it is run by the COA, and the people who volunteer to run it also are recipients of the tax refund. So it kind of is self-perpetuating or whatever.
That's great. Yeah, no. And as far as HR and onboarding, I mean, you Emily could put together the packets. It's not, for this kind of a thing, it's not really difficult. And like, what are they called when you do group a paper party where everybody gets the same packet, you go through it all together. Emily could do that. It'd be great to be able to group it, but for the 8 to 12 people. And if I sign up, if I apply for the program, not a specific job, when I apply, it is not a guarantee that I will be placed and get this tax credit.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And in some communities, once they are fully on board, if it becomes popular, they do have to cap it and then put people on a waiting list. And
okay. And what happens the next year? Do you automatically get to keep your job?
No, again, we can define it, but some communities have said you can only work like every other year at most. So some have said you can work 1 year and then we'll see you in X number of future years, but they don't, and they don't want to keep, obviously, they want a lot of people to have the opportunity.
It depends on the demand from year to year, how many people want to participate in the program.
Right. Sure.
And in some cases, the departments love to keep the same people coming back year after year because they're really integral to the operation of the department. But that's something that can be determined as we see the demand for the program.
Okay, great.
So that's kind of it. That was what we had to kind of get you up to speed on the program. Any thoughts? So
once you're so once the discretionary or kind of the loose ends of this are tidied up, and it'll require a legal review. I'm thinking.
Probably.
Okay.
And that's up to you. But yeah.
I would say we would definitely want a legal review of the application.
Yeah. So we're not saying anything that we shouldn't say and ask.
Right.
And I will say, Mayor, there is also, like, this is a PowerPoint presentation, but there is also, we need to put together kind of the written description in a more city website friendly way so that people can bring it up, read it. It will firmly describe the process step by step by step by step and you know, all of that. So this is just kind of to get everybody familiar with it right now. This isn't the end.
Right. So when that more of a narrative comes out, and even if there's a short, like I'm not worried about the PSA, but that narrative that really kind of meshes it out for a vote on it, I would like that to go to legal for review.
Yep. I agree.
All of it. Not just, I mean, the application, Jen's right, but also just the program, just to make sure we're totally in line with MGL.
Yep.
Okay.
Are we keeping you up, Mayor?
I'm so sorry. You know what? I always forget when we're looking at a document, the camera is still on. My apologies. My apologies.
I don't know why it was such a short city council meeting last night.
Yeah, I was going to say it's all your fault, Peg.
I know.
And JP. So as far as mayor, at this point, like mayor acceptance, I'm very much in favor. And I thank you all for the work and the diligence. You know, the concept is like a no-brainer, like, oh wow, we should really, you know, look into this and do it. And then clearly the nuts and bolts and the granular level of such a program required a lot of work. And I thank everybody on the committee that, you know, one, believed in the theory to make it real, and then did such a thorough job to walk through the program this way in a relatively short time during a pandemic. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to support it. I love the creative way of how you're looking about administering the program, maybe a volunteer, and glad to hear the latitude that the city has to do this. Because it's a pilot, and will there be an annual or semi-annual like review and report that's given to the city council to see how the pilot's doing?
There will have to be,
Sure.
and that will be part of our process. And whether you know, I don't see this committee being that source, because you know we'll disband at some point. But it should be part of the process that at the end of every fiscal year we evaluate number of people, jobs, how much was given out. You know, that'll be part of the process that we will codify.
Great. And then the anticipation is in that fourth year, it would be, okay, this is the pilot, this is the end result. These are like outcomes, you know, with recommendations or consideration. If the pilot is extended to a more formal project, I'm assuming?
Yeah, if it becomes an ongoing thing that we continue, and if we want to open it up to more people, if it has been so successful and more people want to participate, clearly we'd have to assess the financial impact of that. But we want to leave all of the parameters open based on what we learn during the pilot. We don't want to shut anything off. You know, this is why you do a pilot. You try to learn new stuff. So,
is there any consideration in a program like this in other cities and towns or allowed under MGL to certainly have like some minimum income, like eligibility like we have, but also some consideration of the percent of new growth and new value added onto these properties?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
yeah.
So I guess if you were, so you have the two incomes there, right? and say you were 20% above the married couple or the senior income, right, by HUD. However, in a given fiscal year, like last year, with the 3-year assessments, the percent of taxes because of value was much higher than other years and caught people by surprise. So say the average house price goes from 274 to 400. So even though you meet, like, maybe you're a little bit over the minimum, the top income level, but because of the growth, you maybe could apply for a tax credit under this program because the growth itself has pushed your taxes up.
Well, that's a good question. If your taxes, if I understand it correctly, if your taxes go up, you really should be able to stretch the income eligibility requirements to kind of figure out to include someone who's affected by the increase in the taxes.
Yeah, and I don't know how, I mean, maybe it's not a pilot thing, but I just think of, the folks who are so surprised and taken aback. I mean, I think if you lived here a while, you get used to the last 2 fiscal quarters basically makes up for the first 2 because that's kind of a preliminary rate, right?
Right.
But so to expect it goes up, okay, you expect it to go up. But last year, it really went up. And if you had a 2-family, we're talking about 33% gain in value. So I'm like, in those years, I just think of those people who needed a year or at least a half a year to recalibrate their benefits or whatever they needed to figure out, maybe raise a rent to make up that difference in the tax jump. So, I'm just thinking in those weird cases, you've got somebody, who makes $5,000 more than our income in a year where growth has gone up more than 15%, maybe they're eligible. I just throw that out as an idea. But
we hear the idea, and I would say that the total flexibility of the standards of the program are in your hands, our hands. It is totally flexible. We determine the strict definition of using the guidelines that HUD has for low and moderate income. One, it's an easy way of making sure that the neediest of the community get to participate. And we had hoped actually to pursue the CPA as a method of funding the program. And I'm just not sure that is a possibility. That will require some additional legal work if we were to go down that route, and we would be bound by those eligibility criteria. We could say 120% of income status.
And
Joe, I see your hand raised.
Mayor, because it's a pilot, we have the flexibility to tweak the program depending on the circumstances that we encounter during the course of the year. So, we could certainly, if circumstances warrant, we could tweak the program.
Right. And maybe that's at the end, right after the year or 2 or whatnot, and you see how many people participate, right? You'll get feedback. Yeah,
exactly.
I just throw it out as an idea, just based on what happened, in our reevaluation year. Now it'll be 5 years from now. So, it's not like it's going to happen again during the pilot period.
Right. And I think, by virtue of it being a pilot, you're going to have those, oh, shoot moments where we didn't think of something and we continue on with the program, but we write it down and say, we got to change this before we make it a full program, and it'll have its bumps. But I think things like what you're talking about, if those materialize, then we address it and put it before city council with a change to it, and we're off to the races.
And how does this get entered into city council? Is this in a form of an ordinance, or is this how is it approved? Under what method is it approved by city council?
So JP has informed me, I believe, that the actual law has to be accepted by city council, which apparently has been done years ago.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I know that.
The other thing that city council has a role in is, I believe it's voting on the exemption amount.
Got it.
I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, JP and Jen. Yeah. So if we change that, we would have to vote that through city council.
And also the law is quite flexible. If there are certain things that need to be tweaked or changed, or policies or regulations, the law actually says that the community has the right to make those determinations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roughly interpreted.
I get it. Yep. And then, so again, I said, I'm so grateful for the work. I knew from the onset this wasn't going to be, an easy walk in the park kind of project. So for me, are you looking, is there an official act I take? Are you looking for a support letter? Are you looking for me to be at the public hearing to say this is great and is not a detriment or impediment to municipal operations as they stand now?
I think from the city council perspective, we, the city council, will make a recommendation to the mayor to allow this program to go and be kicked off with and you'll understand all of the parameters, and you then will respond in some sort of a written fashion that, yes, in fact, you are taking a recommendation and this program will move forward.
Okay, got it.
There's nothing, I don't think, we've already accepted the law. So
yeah,
it's really kind of between the city council and you now.
Kind of the way of setting up the budget to accommodate this through the tax overlay account, if I'm not mistaken, Jen.
Yeah, it actually, the overlay comes into play when we do the tax recap. So that's, we would increase the amount that has to go into the overlay, which would increase, the amount that taxes have to make up above our revenue source. So it's kind of more of yes to the budget, but the overlay actually falls into the revenue side of things, even though it's an expense because it's an offset.
I was going to say, right, it's an offset. Okay. Yeah, and when will this go to city council again?
Well, I was going to have it on the third.
Looking at that whiteboard on your side there.
Pardon me?
You keep looking at that whiteboard trying to figure out a best time to fill it in.
I know. I have a whiteboard there.
Isn't there any white space there?
No, there is not.
You have so many things on the agenda.
I got nothing. But we were going to try to put it on February 3rd, but that filled up with some things.
Yeah.
So we may go with the 17th, but I want it to be, actually, do we want it to be something where the public does interaction? So we make it kind of a pseudo public hearing where the public can ask us questions, or are we just going to put it out there, lay it out there as a recommendation to the mayor with more? I mean, so on the one hand, I fear that in a city council meeting, the questions could go all over the map and we will get nowhere. My preference is that city council makes the recommendation, presents it to the mayor. If the mayor approves it, we then start the public relations campaign where perhaps we have Easthampton media videos, we have small meetings where residents can ask questions, like town halls kind of thing. But in a city council setting, I just fear it could go off the rails a little bit because we may not be able to answer all the very minutia kind of questions that might come up. But
yeah, I defer to you. I was just wondering if,
no, that would be my preference actually, but
I think that makes sense, Councilor Coniff, and I think it still gives the public, should there be anyone at the Zoom meeting who would have questions, time to raise those questions, and for the committee to consider any other thoughts and the mayor to consider those thoughts as we begin a rollout, if it's so recommended by the council and the mayor.
And I think, once and if the mayor does a formal acceptance of this, and we kind of are moving in that direction and we've done some PR, I'm more than willing to have it become a public hearing in city council, once a few hurdles have been crossed, some publicity is out there, then we create a public hearing where the public can go back and forth with this committee or the city council to get further answers. You know, there's a lot of, it's just on day one, I think it could be not productive.
Yeah.
In the spirit of trying to get work done in a city council meeting.
On Zoom.
Right. So, like I said, I may put it in the packet for the 3rd, depends on if we can get all these answers that you want. But if not, we'll no later than the 17th of February.
Okay. I'm just looking at the, yep, all right.
Because we have the housing plan on the 17th,
Right.
which will be.
I'm looking at the, I was going to say, yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. So we'll figure it out though.
Okay.
And you know, you'll get notice of when it's coming because we'll want you obviously to speak. You come to all the city council meetings, but we would like you to, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speak your acceptance or positivity around this.
Okay. I'm in.
Okay.
Excellent.
So that concludes this. JP, do you want to set another meeting so that we can get some of these questions answered? Is that maybe what we should do now?
Would it make sense to meet in a week or so?
Could we get these answers by then? What's today?
Why don't we could say the 2nd. I'm sorry, I can't get to my calendar here with the view we have.
We could say the 4th.
Yep.
4th.
That's in 2 weeks approximately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Could we say 6:30?
Please hold. Yes.
6:30, February 4th for our next meeting. Excellent.
Okay.
And hopefully we can go over the questions that were raised. Anything else?
Nothing for me. Thank you so much, Mayor, for.
Oh, yeah.
I know you have nothing else
I'm
to
looking
do.
at the notes. No, this is just great work. Again, I can't say enough. Thank you to each one of you for jumping on this and kind of getting into the weeds and I don't want to say it's certainly a reality of the program and I feel good about it becoming a reality for our seniors.
Great. That's great.
I would like to thank the other members of the committee for all the hard work. It was a long summer for sure and a long fall. So thank you very much and let's move forward. Any other thoughts for this evening? That being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn till February 4th at 6:30.
So moved.
Second, is there a second? Let's have a roll call. Stan?
Approved.
Joe?
Aye.
Peg?
Yes, aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Brendan?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
And JP Kwasinski? Aye.
He hesitated.
Thanks.
Never know.
We needed that. Thanks for all being here.
Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you, Mayor,
Bye.
for
Thank you
your
all.
attention.
Thank you.
Take care.